I will not pay a cent.
Before we begin, I need you to understand something about Arya Caldwell. She is not the kind of woman who screams. She is not the kind of woman who throws things or cries in parking lots, or calls her sister at 2 a.m. to say, "Can you believe what he did to me?" No. Arya Caldwell is the kind of woman who sits perfectly still and counts. She counts every slight, every lie, every dinner he came home late and offered no explanation for. Every time he walked into a room and looked through her instead of at her, she counts it all, the way a banker counts money, quietly, precisely, without a single trembling finger. And when the total is high enough, she collects. This is her story. And honey, it is deeply satisfying. Seoul, South Korea. The Gyeongbuk-dong district, where the air smells like old pine and new money. Where the hills are lined with traditional Hanok mansions and the kind of quiet that only wealth can buy. It is here, on a curved private lane with no English signage and a gate that opens only by retinal scan, that the estate stands. $12 million. $12 million of stone and silk and soaring timber beams. A courtyard garden that Arya herself designed by hand. Every stone placed, every Korean maple chosen, every paper lantern string measured, so that when they lit up at dusk, the light fell just so across the water. Feature she'd commissioned from an artist in Jeju. 10 years. It took her 10 years to make that house a home. And every single year of those 10, she was also running the financial architecture of the Iron Dragon Syndicate, the most strategically invisible criminal organization in East Asia. Let me paint you a picture of who Arya Caldwell is. She is 54 years old. She is a black woman from Atlanta, Georgia, who came to Seoul at 23 with a mathematics degree, a French manicure, and the kind of confidence that reads in any language. She did not come to Seoul to find a man. She came because a professor told her she had the rarest kind of mind. The kind that sees patterns in systems that other people think are random. And a research fellowship had taken her to this city, and this city had kept her. She met Kang Jun when she was 24. He was 27. Beautiful, dangerous, burning with ambition. He had the kind of eyes that looked at you like you were the answer to a question he'd been asking his whole life. She was not naive. She knew what he was. She knew the family he came from, the business that wasn't a business, the men who called him Hyung with too much reverence for it to be simple affection. She knew, and she chose him anyway, because Arya Caldwell has never in her life run from anything complicated. What she could not have known is that she would end up being the thing that made him, not the woman behind the man, the architect behind the empire. She built the financial infrastructure of the Iron Dragon Syndicate from the ground up. The shell companies, the clean businesses, the shipping licenses, the offshore trusts. She took a mid-level criminal organization and transformed it into something that looked, on paper, like a respectable conglomerate with interests in hospitality, logistics, and private real estate development. She made him a king. She just didn't realize kings sometimes forget who built the throne.
VIP Recovery Wing, Samsung Medical Center. Seoul, Room 412. The room is beautiful, as far as hospital rooms go, and Arya made sure of it, not out of vanity, but because she understood that environments shape thoughts, and she was not going to heal surrounded by institutional beige. There is a single orchid on the table, a cashmere throw folded at the foot of the bed, her reading glasses beside a small framed photograph of the Gyeongbuk-dong courtyard in autumn. She does not have a photograph of her husband. That, in itself, tells you something. Arya has been in this room for 11 days. She had what her cardiologist called a stress-induced acute cardiac event, which is a doctor's careful way of saying her heart, quite literally, gave out from carrying too much for too long. She is recovering from open heart surgery. She is 54 years old. She has a scar down the center of her chest that she has not yet looked at in a mirror. She is sitting up in bed. Not because the nurses told her to, but because Aria Caldwell does not lie flat. Not when she can help it. She is wearing her own silk robe, dark charcoal, brought by Sang-uk on the third day. Her natural hair is pulled back with a wide satin headband, the color of deep plum. Even here, even after the surgery and the tubes and 12 days of institutional food, she looks like a woman who is choosing to be in this bed, like a queen who decided to rest, not one who was knocked down. She is reading. Financial reports, actually. Her second-in-command sends encrypted files to her tablet every morning because the syndicate does not stop for cardiac events and Aria does not stop for anything. That is when the door opens. She does not look up immediately. She finishes her sentence first. Then she looks up. And there he is. Kang Jun, 57 years old, still wearing his authority like a second skin. The broad shoulders, the steel grey suit, the silver that has moved through his hair since his early 50s and made him look not older, but somehow more formidable. He is still, by any objective measure, a striking man. He is also not alone. She is 29. Her name is Gia. She is the kind of beautiful that requires considerable maintenance and considerable confidence to stand in a hospital room next to a recovering woman and look straight ahead. Her hair is long, immaculate. Her coat is camel-colored and expensive. And around her neck, Aria stops. Her eyes do not widen. They do not fill. They simply still. Around Gia's neck are Aria's grandmother's pearls. A 3-strand vintage set, hand-knotted, brought over from Atlanta in a velvet pouch that Aria's mother pressed into her hands at the airport 30 years ago, with the words, "These are for the woman you're going to become, baby. Don't let anybody tell you you didn't earn them." Around this woman's neck, in this hospital room. On this day, Aria sets down her tablet. She folds her hands in her lap, and she waits. Kang Jun does not sit down. She notices that immediately. He stands at a distance not far enough to be near the door, not close enough to be at the bedside. He stands in the middle of the room with the posture of a man who has rehearsed this, and the energy of a man pretending he hasn't. He says her name once. Aria. She says nothing. He clears his throat. And then, because Kang Jun has never been able to tolerate silence, he didn't create. He speaks. He tells her he's thought about this carefully. He tells her the medical bills are significant. He tells her the syndicate's resources are not unlimited. And her condition, the surgery, the recovery, the projected months of follow-up care, represents a financial burden he can no longer underwrite. He uses the word financial burden to describe his wife's heart surgery. Aria breathes in through her nose. Slowly, evenly. The same breath she uses at a negotiating table. Then he says the sentence. The one that will cost him everything. I won't pay a cent for a heart that's already broken. The room is very quiet. Gia, to whatever credit she has, does not smile, but she doesn't look away either. She says. Aria looks at her husband for a long moment. She is thinking many things. She is thinking about the day she restructured the syndicate's entire shipping portfolio and saved him $3 million in one afternoon. She is thinking about the night in Busan, 22 years ago, when a rival family sent 4 men to their hotel, and she was the one who got them out through a service corridor she'd memorized on the way in. Just in case. Because Aria always plans for just in case. She is thinking about the deed to the Seongbuk-dong estate. She is thinking about a very great many things. But what she says is nothing. She picks up her tablet. She goes back to reading. He waits for an explosion. For tears. For something. He has known this woman for 30 years, and he knows she is not made of ice. She is made of fire. And he is waiting for the fire. It doesn't come. And somehow that is worse. The decision is final, he says. Then he and Gia leave. The door closes behind them with a quiet, expensive click. Aria sits in the silence for exactly 60 seconds. Then she picks up her phone and dials Mr. Choi.
Mr. Choi has been Arya's attorney for 18 years. He is 71 years old. He looks like a man who has seen everything twice, which he has. He spent the first half of his career as a prosecutor and the second half as the most discreet private attorney in Seoul, the kind of man who does not advertise, who does not have a website, who you find only if someone with very high standards refers you. Arya found him through a judge. That's all you need to know. When she calls at 9:30 in the morning, he answers on the second ring. "Mrs. Kang," he says. She tells him briefly, concisely, the way she tells people everything, that her husband has just visited, that he announced he will no longer fund her medical care, that he brought a companion, that she would like Mr. Choi to pull the Caldwell Kang Trust documents and confirm, in writing, what she already knows. Mr. Choi is quiet for a moment, then, "I'll have them on your tablet within the hour." She thanks him. She hangs up. She looks at the orchid on the table, then at the door through which her husband just walked away. And for just a moment, for the first time, her face moves. Not into grief, not into rage, into something older and deeper than either, something that looks, from the outside, almost like a woman setting down a very heavy stone she has been carrying for a very long time. Almost like relief. Here is what Kang Jun does not know. He does not know it because he never read the documents he signed. He is, in this way, like many powerful men, accustomed to people handling the details, confident the details serve him, too comfortable to verify. 20 years ago, when the Iron Dragon Syndicate was in its most aggressive expansion phase, Arya had quietly, carefully, legally restructured the syndicate's primary holding structure. The Seongbuk-dong estate, purchased through a private LLC. The LLC is registered in Arya Caldwell's name. Only. Not Kang Jun's, not the syndicate's, Arya Caldwell's. The Iron Dragon's main shipping licenses, the ones that move approximately 60% of the syndicate's legitimate revenue, the financial backbone of the entire operation, those are held through the Caldwell Kong Offshore Trust. This requires 2 signatures to modify, or 1, if the other trustee is incapacitated, or 1, if the trust deed's governing clause is invoked by the primary trustee, which is Arya, which has always been Arya. She had told Kang Jun this once, early on. She explained the structure clearly, thoroughly with diagrams, because Arya always explains things with diagrams. He had nodded. He had said, "You handle it. You're better at this than I am." Then he went back to being the face of the organization while she ran the bones of it. She had not hidden this from him. She had simply relied on his confidence, his arrogance, his absolute certainty that nothing could touch him, to make him careless. And careless men, Arya knows, are the easiest kind to check. The documents arrive on her tablet at 10:47 a.m. She reads through them, nods once. Then she sends Mr. Choi a reply. 4 words: begin the Caldwell Protocol. At 7 o'clock in the evening, Arya is watching the news. She does this every night, not out of habit, but out of vigilance. She has always said the news tells you 2 things: what the public knows and what someone wants the public to know. Both are useful. Tonight, the lead entertainment segment features the annual Hangang Cultural Gala, one of Seoul's most photographed social occasions. The guest list is long and luminous, and there, on her hospital television screen, standing under the chandeliers of the Grand Hyatt Seoul in a charcoal tuxedo, Kang Jun. He is laughing. He looks relaxed. He looks like a man who did not spend this morning informing his post-operative wife that her life is a line item he no longer wishes to fund. He looks, frankly, like a man having the time of his life. Jia is beside him in a champagne gown. Her hair is up. The pearls are still around her neck. The camera catches them both clearly as they walk the arrival line. Sand, the reporter says something about the Iron Dragon Group's CEO and his companion. And Kong Jun smiles for the camera with the full confidence of a man who believes he has already won. Arya watches all of it. She does not turn off the television. She watches until the segment ends and the news moves on to something about the subway system. Then she picks up the burner phone that was delivered to her room that afternoon. She dials one number. It rings once. A voice answers. Queen. Just that word. Low. Respectful. Firm. The voice of a man who has been waiting for this call. Arya says, I saw the pearls. A pause. Then, I know, I'm sorry. Don't be sorry, she says. Be ready.
Sang-uk arrives at 11 that night. He does not come through the front entrance. He has not come through the front entrance of any building in 25 years. Old habits do not retire. He comes through the service corridor, past the laundry room, up the back stairwell, and presents himself at the door of room 412, as quietly as a man of his size. And history can present himself anywhere. He is 53 years old. He has the kind of face that tells you exactly what kind of life he has lived. Not frightening, but weighted. He carries 20 years of loyalty in his eyes and something that might be grief in the set of his jaw. He pulls a chair to Arya's bedside and sits in it like a soldier at the bedside of a general. He does not speak first. He waits. She looks at him for a long time. This man who has stood outside her door for 2 decades, who tasted food from unknown caterers before she did, who drove her children to school on elevated threat days and said nothing to anyone because she asked him to say nothing, who called her queen, not as a title, not as flattery, but as a statement of fact, because Sang-uk has always understood this organization's true hierarchy far more accurately than the man who calls himself its king. She says, How many? He says, All of them. She blinks once. All of them, Sang-uk. Every man you personally vetted, every security detail you built from scratch, every logistics coordinator who knows the shipping routes, every accountant in the Caldwell division. He pauses. They know who put the food on their table. They know whose mind built the system they work inside. And they are not going to pretend otherwise because he brought a young woman to a gala. Arya is quiet. Then, he moved her into the house today. Sang-uk's jaw tightens. Just barely. I know. She was wearing my grandmother's pearls. The muscle in his jaw moves again. He is a man who has seen many forms of violence and does not flinch from them. But this particular kind of disrespect, lands somewhere in him that violence never reached. Arya C., he says, using her name for the first time in perhaps 3 years, because he does not use names lightly. I want you to know something. She waits. In 30 years, I have watched you build every wall of that organization. I have watched you shield him when he was reckless. I have watched you absorb losses that should have broken you and restructure them into gains. And I have watched you do things. Brilliant, quiet, unacknowledged things that kept the Iron Dragon alive when it should have died. He pauses. And I want you to know that not a single man who watched you do those things has forgotten. She is looking at her hands. He has forgotten, she says quietly. Yes, says Sang-uk. He has. But the men's still loyal to the queen. He reaches into his jacket, sets a burner phone on the bedside table beside her orchid. Are not loyal to the king. Arya looks at the phone. She picks it up. She says, Tell me everything that happened at the house today. And Sang-uk begins to talk. Meanwhile, at the Seongbuk-dong estate, GR had walked through the front gate that afternoon with the particular energy of a woman who believes she has won a competition. She has been running for 2 years. She stood in the front courtyard, the one with the Korean maples, the paper lanterns, the stone pathway that Arya designed to curl in a specific direction so that it caught the morning light, and looked at all of it and said simply, It's mine now. No one within earshot said anything. The house staff, the 3 full-time attendants who ran the estate with quiet precision that only comes from working for someone with very high standards, were watching this young woman stand in the courtyard. And they were communicating, not with words, with eyes, with the particular language of people who know exactly who built this place and who is now attempting to occupy it. That evening, Gia decided she wanted to make changes. She wanted to start with the main bedroom closet, the size of a modest studio apartment, containing 30 years of Aria's wardrobe, couture pieces, bespoke Korean silk, a row of immaculate shoes, a glass-fronted cabinet of accessories that included several other pieces of vintage jewelry she had not yet gotten her hands on. Gia called for one of the house staff and announced she wanted everything boxed up and sent to storage. Mrs. Park, a quiet woman who has worked in that house for 14 years, said very calmly that she would need authorization to move Mrs. Kang's belongings. Gia said she was the authorization. Mrs. Park said nothing further. She simply went to make tea. Gia, undeterred, went to the closet herself and discovered for the first time that the closet has a secondary security code, separate from the house system. A code Aria installed 3 years ago without much fanfare, and that Kang Jun had never questioned because Kang Jun had never had occasion to go into his wife's closet. Gia entered the master house code Kang Jun gave her. Nothing. She tried again. Nothing. A third time. And then the intercom panel on the closet wall crackled to life. The voice that came through was not the house system's automated voice. It was a human voice. A woman's voice. Low. Warm. Unhurried. The kind of voice that has given orders for 30 years and never once needed to raise it. Gia froze. The voice said, "Hello." Just that. Hello. Like they were running into each other at brunch. Gia looked at the panel, then at the closet door, then back at the panel. The voice continued, "You are standing in my closet." Or attempting to. A small pause, not uncertain, deliberate. "My name is Aria Caldwell. This is my home. These are my belongings. And you," another breath, silk soft, "are trespassing." Gia opened her mouth. "I wouldn't," said the voice, quiet as still water, sharp as everything beneath it. "I really wouldn't speak right now if I were you. You'll want to hear what comes next." Silence. "I've already placed a call. Officers will be at the gate in..." A pause, brief, unhurried, as if checking a watch. 4 minutes and 40 seconds. Give or take. The warmth in the voice did not disappear. It simply refined itself, like something being distilled into its purest, most concentrated form. "You have time to gather your coat, your bag." Another pause, the last one. And when the voice returned, there was something in it almost gentle, almost maternal, and absolutely merciless. "And my grandmother's pearls." Click. The intercom went silent. The closet door did not open. Gia stood in the hallway of the Seongbuk-dong estate. The estate she had believed 3 hours ago was now hers. And for the first time since she walked through that gate, she felt the full, true weight of where she was standing. She was standing in a house she did not own, in a life she did not understand, reaching for a legacy she was not equipped to touch. And across Seoul, in a hospital room with an orchid on the table and a cashmere throw at the foot of the bed, Aria Caldwell set down the burner phone, looked at the ceiling for one long, quiet moment, then opened her tablet. The Caldwell protocol had already begun. Kang Jun did not know it yet, but in 48 hours, he was going to discover what men like him always discover too late. That the woman he had dismissed, the woman he had left bedridden, the woman whose heart he had insulted while she was still healing from surgery, had not been powerless. She had been patient, and patience, in the hands of a woman like Aria Caldwell, is not a weakness. It is a weapon. They say a queen never explains herself. She doesn't need to. She doesn't issue press releases. She doesn't make announcements at galas. She doesn't rush, or beg, or perform her pain for an audience. She simply moves. And when she moves, the board changes. Aria Caldwell spent 30 years building an empire and 14 years building a home, and she did it all with the kind of steady, brilliant, yet dignified grace that men like Kang Jun take for granted until the exact moment it is withdrawn. He walked into that hospital room thinking he was ending something. He was actually beginning something he was very much not prepared for. Because here is the truth that no one tells you about powerful women of a certain age. Women who have survived things, built things, lost things, and rebuilt them again. They are not afraid of starting over. They have done it before. They will do it beautifully. And this time, everything is already in her name. The end.